The morning sky was bright and clear as the elegant countryside wedding venue slowly came to life. Fresh white flowers lined the stone pathways, crystal decoration sparkled inside the grand ballroom, and dozens of staff members hurried from one task to another. Luxury cars rolled through the front gate while decorators added the final touches to a celebration that had taken months to organize. Guests would arrive in only a few hours, and every detail had to be perfect. Inside the spacious professional kitchen, one person remained completely calm despite the growing pressure. Daniel Carter, a 38-year-old single father, carefully checked a simmering sauce before tasting it with quiet satisfaction. His white chef's jacket was spotless, though it showed years of honest work. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and faint lines around his eyes hinted at countless sleepless nights spent balancing work and raising his daughter alone. He moved through the kitchen with confidence, giving gentle instructions instead of loud commands. Years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife to a sudden illness. Instead of allowing grief to destroy him, he poured every ounce of strength into raising their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. He worked long shifts, saved every dollar he could, studied business during late nights, and slowly invested in an abandoned countryside estate. What began as a forgotten property eventually became one of the most beautiful wedding venues in the region. Very few people knew the quiet chef preparing meals was also the owner of the entire estate. Daniel preferred it that way. He believed respect earned through actions meant more than respect demanded by wealth. Lily sat in a small office near the kitchen, coloring pictures while occasionally peeking through the doorway. She loved watching her father cook. Every few minutes Daniel smiled at her, and she answered with an enthusiastic wave before returning to her drawings. The kitchen staff admired their close bond. They often joked that Lily was the youngest quality inspector in the building because she always wanted to taste every dessert. Today's wedding was one of the largest bookings the venue had ever hosted. More than 300 guests were expected, including several influential business owners and local celebrities. Daniel personally designed the menu, selecting every ingredient himself before sunrise. Fresh herbs, premium vegetables, handmade bread, delicate pastries, and perfectly aged cuts of meat filled every workstation. The kitchen smelled of butter, garlic, rosemary, citrus, and freshly baked pastries. As preparations continued, the wedding planner rushed into the kitchen carrying a clipboard. She thanked Daniel for arriving before dawn and confirmed that everything was running exactly on schedule. Daniel simply nodded and returned to arranging elegant appetizers with careful precision. He never sought praise. Seeing satisfied guests was reward enough. Outside, the bride arrived in an expensive luxury vehicle surrounded by bridesmaids, photographers, and makeup artists. Her designer gown shimmered under the afternoon light as everyone admired her appearance. She walked through the venue inspecting every decoration, expecting absolute perfection. Although the flowers, tables, and ballroom exceeded her expectations, she insisted on checking the kitchen personally. The kitchen doors swung open as she entered with several bridesmaids behind her. Conversation among the staff immediately quieted. Daniel looked up briefly, smiled politely, and continued preparing delicate garnishes without interrupting his work. The bride glanced around before her eyes settled on Daniel's simple uniform. Assuming he was just another employee, she frowned. "So you're the chef?" she asked with obvious disappointment. Daniel answered politely. "Yes, I'm overseeing today's menu." She folded her arms. "I expected someone who actually looked important." Several cooks exchanged uncomfortable glances but remained silent. The bride stepped closer, examining the food without understanding the care behind every detail. "I hope you know what you're doing. My guests are very successful people. They won't accept ordinary food." Daniel kept his voice calm. "Everything has been prepared with great care. I believe your guests will enjoy the meal." She laughed softly, but loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Confidence is easy when you're just working in someone else's kitchen. One bridesmaid chuckled while another looked embarrassed by the comment. Daniel simply returned to arranging the plates. The bride continued. People should remember their place. Staff shouldn't act as though they're equals with the guests. An uneasy silence filled the kitchen. Lily quietly watched from the office doorway, confused by the stranger's harsh words. She looked at her father, expecting him to become angry. Instead, Daniel offered his daughter a reassuring smile before continuing his work exactly as before. His composure only seemed to frustrate the bride further. I hope you understand that today is about people who've achieved something in life. Daniel finally met her eyes. I sincerely hope your wedding is everything you've dreamed of. She interpreted his calm response as weakness. Just make sure the food arrives on time. Without another word, she turned and walked out, followed by her bridesmaids. Only after the kitchen doors closed did the staff begin speaking again. Several employees looked upset on Daniel's behalf, but he simply adjusted another tray and quietly reminded everyone to stay focused. The celebration deserved their best work regardless of what had just happened. Outside, guests continued arriving, completely unaware that the humble chef they had barely noticed had built the magnificent venue surrounding them with years of sacrifice, determination, and unwavering love for his daughter. Before the evening was over, the truth hidden behind the white chef's jacket would change the entire wedding forever. The afternoon sun illuminated the gardens as hundreds of guests filled the elegant wedding venue with cheerful conversation. A string quartet performed soft music near the fountain while servers moved gracefully between tables carrying sparkling drinks and beautifully arranged appetizers. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, fresh white roses, and carefully folded linen. Every detail reflected months of planning, and every guest admired the breathtaking setting without realizing who had made it all possible. Inside the kitchen, Daniel Carter calmly directed the final preparations. The last entree was plated with precision, desserts were arranged like works of art, and every sauce was inspected one final time. Despite the bride's earlier remarks, his focus never wavered. He believed the quality of his work would always speak louder than unnecessary arguments. The first course left the kitchen exactly on schedule. Servers carried elegant plates into the ballroom, where conversations slowly paused as guests admired the presentation. Fresh herbs, vibrant vegetables, and perfectly prepared ingredients transformed every plate into a masterpiece. Within minutes, expressions around the room shifted from curiosity to amazement. This is incredible. I've attended weddings around the world, and this is easily one of the finest meals I've ever tasted. The chef deserves an award. Praise spread from table to table until nearly everyone was talking about the remarkable food. Even guests who rarely complimented wedding catering found themselves asking for the chef's name. The groom smiled proudly, believing the expensive event planner deserved the credit. The bride also accepted compliments with confidence, assuming her careful planning had created the unforgettable experience. Back in the kitchen, Daniel thanked each member of his staff for their hard work. No one celebrated yet because several courses still remained. Excellence required consistency from beginning to end. Little Lily happily helped arrange small dessert garnishes under the supervision of the pastry chef. She carefully placed fresh berries onto delicate cakes while proudly wearing a tiny apron that matched her father's uniform. Every employee treated her like family because they had watched her grow up inside the venue. As the main course reached the ballroom, applause unexpectedly broke out from one section of guests. Several diners stood to compliment the meal, encouraging others to clap as well. The atmosphere became warmer, and conversation centered almost entirely around the extraordinary cuisine. The bride finally decided she should personally congratulate the head chef. Not because she respected him, but because she believed acknowledging excellent staff reflected well on her as the hostess. She confidently walked toward the kitchen with two bridesmaids following behind. When she entered, Daniel was calmly checking the final desserts. She folded her arms. I'll admit the food turned out better than I expected. Daniel nodded politely. I'm glad your guests are enjoying it. She smiled in a way that sounded more like a compliment to herself. I suppose my standards pushed everyone to perform better. Daniel simply thanked the kitchen team instead of responding to her remark. Before another word could be spoken, the kitchen doors opened again. The venue's general manager entered quickly, looking slightly anxious as though searching for someone important. The moment he saw Daniel, his expression changed completely. There you are, Mr. Carter. I've been looking everywhere for you. The bride looked surprised. The manager continued respectfully. The investors have arrived earlier than expected. They would like to meet with you before the reception continues. They said they'll wait in the executive conference room, but only if you're available. Daniel glanced at the desserts. I'll join them after the final course leaves the kitchen. Of course, sir. The manager immediately turned toward the staff. Please make sure everything continues exactly as Mr. Carter planned. Every employee nodded respectfully. Yes, sir. The bride frowned. Why are you calling the chef Mr. Carter like that? The manager looked confused. Because he owns this venue. The room became completely silent. One of the bridesmaids blinked in disbelief. What did you just say? The manager smiled proudly. Mr. Daniel Carter purchased this property years ago when it was abandoned. He personally financed the renovations, designed the kitchens, hired every department manager, and transformed it into one of the most respected wedding venues in the region. The bride stared at Daniel without speaking. The manager continued. He still enjoys working as head chef because cooking has always been his passion. Even though he owns the estate, he chooses to work alongside every employee. Another staff member added quietly. He knows every employee's name and has never considered himself above anyone. The bride's face slowly lost its confidence. She remembered every dismissive word she had spoken earlier that morning. She remembered telling him to know his place. She remembered laughing at his uniform. She remembered assuming he was insignificant simply because he chose to work in the kitchen. Guests standing near the kitchen entrance began noticing the unusual silence. Curious family members slowly gathered outside the doors. The groom walked inside. What's happening? Before anyone else answered, the manager spoke respectfully. Your wedding venue owner was just discussing tonight's service. The groom looked at Daniel in surprise. You own this place? Daniel answered calmly. Yes. The groom looked around the magnificent kitchen before glancing back toward the ballroom. You've built something extraordinary. Daniel smiled modestly. It took many years. Whispers immediately spread among nearby guests. That's the owner? I thought he was only the chef. I can't believe he worked in the kitchen all day. The bride spoke to him rather harshly earlier. More guests gathered, and the truth traveled across the ballroom within minutes. Conversation stopped as everyone looked toward the kitchen entrance. The elegant celebration suddenly felt very different. Standing in complete silence, the bride finally understood that the humble man she had mocked throughout the morning was not simply preparing her wedding meal. He was the person whose vision, sacrifice, and generosity had created the beautiful place where her dream wedding was taking place.